Welcome back to another episode of Magic's in the Mess, the go-to podcast for ambitious women ready to stop pretending, start aligning, and finally build success your way. I'm your host, Danielle McKinley, speaker, business and wealth strategist, and your go-to problem-solving hype girl. Here, we'll help you unlock powerful mindset shifts, discover your magic, and bring your dream life into reality. Each week, I'll deliver raw stories, proven business strategies, and powerful transformations with industry leaders to activate the magic in you. So if you're ready to ditch the pressure, the performative BS, and the noise telling you who you should be, hit subscribe and let's make some magic. All right, magic makers, today's episode is all about resilience, reinvention, and the kind of courage that only comes from walking through fire. My guest, Annamarie Green, knows what it's like to have life fall apart in ways you never saw coming. And she also knows what it takes to rebuild. From navigating profound grief and anxiety to creating powerful healing frameworks like the intuitive therapy method and the anxiety languages, Annamarie has turned her pain into purpose. She is not here to sugarcoat the journey, my friends. She is here to share the raw truth about finding your way when the map burns down and how the magic you're looking for is often buried inside the very mess you're trying to escape. I can promise you this. Her story is one that will remind you that no matter how messy life gets, there's always a way to rise. All right, magic makers, help me welcome Annamarie Green to the show. Annamarie, welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
I am so thankful that you said yes, because when I met you a couple of weeks ago at Powerhouse Women, you are just so radiant. You are just this like bright light. Your energy is contagious. When you walk into a room, like we notice. Okay. And then after hearing a little bit about your story on stage, I just felt like connected to you immediately. And it's so raw and real how you want to make a difference and help. And so I'm just so honored and excited to capture your story today.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I love sharing and I love being a help wherever I can for anyone who's listening. So.
Okay, cool. And you're literally perfect for what this show stands for because, girl, you've been through it. And we're going to talk about that. But I want to start with, you've created this incredible program, the intuitive therapy method. And I want to talk about that, of course. But before we do, I want you to just share a little bit about yourself and about what your work means to you today.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. As she said, I'm Annamarie Green. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm an LCSW and I'm a professional intuitive. So I call myself the intuitive therapist. I have been doing this work for a couple years and I have helped over 300 people become symptom-free in 12 weeks or less using my intuitive therapy method, which is this beautiful breakthrough method that combines the best of energy healings and intuitive reading and psychotherapy and psychology. So it's been a long ride, and a lot of it is born from my personal experiences. I've had a lot of hardships and just really heavy experiences, especially in my like mid to late 20s. And my journey as like a single mom and all, and I'm sure we'll get into all of those pieces of my story, but that along with my professional experience and seeing that the mental health industry is broken. There are these gaps in the industry that weren't helping people. And I wanted to create something that actually made a difference. So one day when my daughter goes into the world and potentially needs the support of some mental health professional, that there are practices and methods that actually move the needle instead of spending years kind of suffering and not getting the results that you want.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. And you guys, you can already feel her energy. All right. So let's go back because that's what you do now. And your work is so impactful. I mean, I got to meet a few women who have done sessions with you and like they're raving fans.
Thank you.
So, but before this, right, life was pretty hard for you. Walk us back to just take us where you intuitively feel called to start with your story and starting to discover these gifts that you have and what you've now put into practice.
Yeah, I always say that my start was when I found out I was pregnant when I was a junior in college. And I was like 21 and it rocked my world completely. I felt like such a failure and I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how my future was going to pan out. And at the time, I was very much a person who was like, I have this 10-year plan. This is what I'm doing. I'm the oldest of 5. So like, I am setting the example for the rest of my family. And it really it started to bring up these feelings that I probably felt my whole life, or I know that I felt my whole life, but I was so like eyes on the prize type of a person where I was like, don't look back, don't focus, don't feel your feelings. A lot of people are shocked that before this whole experience, I was a very like emotionally kind of a colder person because I didn't want to feel my own feelings.
Yeah,
and
you don't give that energy at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
that girl's dead.
Yeah, my best friends always joke. They're just like, oh, Annamarie from college, like when we first met was so different. And the reason that it really is the start of my journey is because for the first time, I had to let other people see me and see what I perceived as a mistake. Like it was something that wasn't a part of the plan, and it wasn't like I could hide it or cover it up. People can tell when you're pregnant. And I also had to ask for help, which was something I really did not like doing. And so it started to open me up in new ways. But again, I pushed forward. And then a year and a half later, my best friend and the father to my child and my partner passed away by suicide. And that was really the unraveling that finally got me to this place, because it was the heaviest, hardest thing I'd ever experienced. And I already felt like such a burden and such a problem to everyone in my life. I felt guilty and ashamed, and I felt like I was letting everyone down, my daughter, my family, my friends. I felt bad for them. I was like, I feel bad that they have to have me in their life. I was at a really, really low place where I personally didn't want to keep going. The only reason that I did is because I was like, I have this little girl, and she only has one parent now. So I was in therapy twice a week. I was doing EMDR. I was doing all the things you're supposed to do. I was taking my education and applying it to my personal life, and it wasn't working. I was still having panic attacks and flashbacks. I was still very, very anxious. I would cry myself to sleep pretty much every single night. It was very, very low. And I was telling one of my best friends about it, and she was like, I think you should try energy healing. She's like, I know you're not really into that stuff, because at the time I was raised Catholic, and I also, having my master's in social work, like I love research, I love data, I love numbers when it comes to looking at what works and what doesn't. And I tried it, and I felt relief for the first time in like 2 years. And that changed everything for me. And I just kept investing in that for myself and seeing the results. And I even started to learn different methods to help my daughter, because she was more anxious, even from that young age. And I wanted to help her, support her in the ways that were working for me. And after a little while, I was like, if this can work for me, then I know it can work for other people, because simultaneously I was seeing these clients who were like, I've been in therapy for years and nothing has worked. At this point, I'm just doing it for the sake of maybe it takes a little bit of the edge off, or like, I don't have any other options. So here I am. And I would let myself get really enraged. I let myself get mad at the system, because that's part of the steps of like recovering, is letting anger kind of move you out of the very bottom, the rock bottom that you're at emotionally. And I was determined to change the system. I was like, no, this is no longer acceptable for so many people to be failed by this system.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a few things that you said that really stood out to me. So the first one was you're a firstborn. So all my firstborns feel very seen right now, including myself, right? And we are really like conditioned to be like the doers. So one of the things that you said, you mentioned, I'm a firstborn, and you talked about some of the emotions that you felt in those early stages before, the help and the discovery. So for somebody who is a firstborn and is listening to this, and they're going, okay, I feel seen, but like, I need a little bit more, like, tell me a little bit more. Can you kind of walk us through what those emotions looked like, so that someone can like be on the lookout for them, either as a partner or as the person?
Yeah. So, and you're talking about before I got to the point where I kind of like hit the rock bottom. Yeah. So before I got pregnant, like I said, I was a little bit more emotionally cold. What I would say I noticed, like, especially looking back, is as a firstborn, I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. I wanted to make life easier for everyone else. And emotions to me were a distraction. emotions were, and letting yourself feel the emotions or being sad about the fact that things are hard felt very weak for me. It felt like something that like
Sure.
I don't be dramatic. That was like a thing that my family would say frequently to me. It's like, don't be dramatic. Like
Oh,
hard work is what gets you places. And so that's what I did. And I remember for the longest time, I thought the only talent and gift I had was that I was a really hard worker. And so regardless of anything else, I could outwork any problem that I experienced. And that just wasn't the case, especially when it comes to like getting pregnant when you're not expecting it
yeah.
and somebody passing away. So I would look for those kinds of things. I would look for where are the places where you tell yourself to stop being dramatic or you invalidate your own experiences. That's usually a sign that you are hiding from a part of yourself and you're being dishonest and out of alignment. Like not necessarily dishonest as in you're lying to like other people, but
Sure.
that you're lying to yourself about what you honestly want. And so that means that you're just trying to make something happen for the sake of making your ego feel safe instead of what actually is going to feel good.
Yeah, you're just shoving it down.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So
Did
good.
that answer the question? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that is so good. Now, something else that you said that makes sense and tracks for all of this is that you struggled to ask for help until you
Mhm.
were forced to do so with your
Yes.
pregnancy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, for somebody that struggles with that, and now you've kind of seen how it served you for a portion of your life, but it really isn't the way you're meant to show up in the world. For
Mhm.
somebody that struggles to ask
Mhm.
for help, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that struggling to ask for help is a survival strategy. It is a way to keep people at a distance. It is a way to try to stay in control. And it is a way to try to protect yourself from other people projecting their shame and their anger. So, a lot of times, people who are afraid to ask for help have experienced other individuals who don't know how to regulate their anger, or anger feels very like
Mm,
aggressive. And there's also a lot of shame mixed in. So that I don't want to ask for help is coming from this place where you learned that being vulnerable is like one of the worst things that you can be, and that it makes
mm,
people not like you, or you learned that um, other people weren't people that you could rely on, that the only thing that you could control was your ability to do something.
yeah.
And so it helps you keep, even though you love people and you're like, yeah, this is my friend, or these are my parents, I love this community. You still have this wall in between you and the community, because when you are not letting people help, you're not actually letting yourself have deep, intimate connection. It goes the same in partnership. You can't
Mhm.
have a soulmate relationship. I have lots of clients who are like, I want to find my soulmate, but they hate asking for help. You can't have a partnership built off of a lack of vulnerability. And that's ultimately what it is. So it felt excruciating to have to ask for help 100%. But what it ended up doing is it made my relationships deeper, more intimate. Like my friendships, I would say that process is what solidified like my best friends being my best friends. I no longer felt like I had to
Yeah,
work really hard in the relationship or that it was transactional. When we let
sure.
ourselves become help, like, or get helped when we're vulnerable, we have nothing we can offer them in return.
Mhm.
That is when we really get to experience the vibrancy and the richness of relationships.
Sure. Okay. And so sometimes I feel like there's stuff so shoved down for people that they
Yeah.
don't even realize that that might be a struggle for them to ask for help.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
So let's
Yeah.
peel it back even a little, like let's put the therapy intuitive hat like really
Yeah.
on for the people
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
like, oh, like they're in denial about their inability to ask for help. What are some
Mhm.
of the things that you see like in clients or in examples where it's so shoved down that they may
Yeah.
not even be aware that that's an issue?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I see is like individuals who love making long-term goals. So we're talking like 5, 6 years in the future,
Mm,
and you're just so zeroed in. You're like, this is what I want. This is like what I'm working towards. Because part of that is going to be like your anxiety actually speaks in what I call like the overachiever anxiety language. So before it
okay.
gets to the point where you're super anxious, it's going to speak in behaviors. And one of those is going to be making those like really long-term plans and figuring out like, okay, I'm going to, even when you look at, okay, I want to take better care of myself. Do you
Mhm.
overpack your schedule? Are you like, I'm going to do every single one of these things because that's what they say I should do?
Mhm.
That is usually a sign that you struggle asking for help. So staying busy, needing to stay busy, feeling like, oh, my schedule's always booked, or having those long-term plans. The other element is, do you procrastinate with things? That's like another kind of telltale sign that like you don't actually like receiving help. And the other really great place to look is your bank account. Does your bank account feel like you're always like working hard to keep it at like the same, and it never goes up? It just always either stays the same, or you feel like money is always leaving you. Usually that can tell us that there is some type of wounded relationship with receiving. And so however you experience money is going to tell you a lot about how you can either receive or not receive, how vulnerable you're being, how connected you feel to the people around you.
So good. So good. Okay, who feels seen? Who's like, oh crap, I need Annamarie in my life. And look, you guys, the reason that I bring on these types of guests is because I know how powerful it is to really confront the deep rooted subconscious limiting beliefs that are not serving you, to unlock your magic. And so thank you so much for those tips, because I feel like sometimes you're like, is that me? I don't know. And it's easier when we bring it back. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about your magic, which is the gifts and how you help people. And obviously you alluded to this a little bit because you were in therapy, you were doing all of the things, and you're like, I feel like shit still, like this isn't working, right?
Yeah.
And then your friend introduced you to some energy healing, and that was like the shift, right?
Yeah.
But at what point did you realize, and I know you said like it was the first time I ever felt relief.
Yeah.
So was it instant that you were like, okay, there's something here? Like, take us through the journey a little bit of once you found the relief.
Yeah. So I would say the relief was pretty instant in the session. And then I noticed it afterwards. So one of the things that I experienced, I know a lot of other people experience, is they'll go to therapy sessions, traditional talk therapy sessions, and they might be able to talk about the thing that they think is the main issue, but they always end up feeling worse afterwards, or they feel more triggered or more reactive. And really and really what's happening is you're talking about it, but the energy is then just like sitting on your body, and it takes a lot to like shove it back down. And by the time you shove it back down, another session comes up. So it's constantly just sitting on you, and you feel worse. And a lot of people will actually notice that they are more triggered and they're more reactive. And when it came to the energy healing, I didn't feel that way. I actually felt like I could breathe a little bit. I felt like even though the outside world hadn't changed yet, I felt like it was going to, like I wasn't going to be in this dark hole forever, and I could start to see the light at the end of the tunnel type of a thing.
Okay. I love that. So if somebody is, let's say they've been in therapy for a while, they're feeling how you were feeling, and they're like, this isn't working. I'm just doing it because I'm desperate at this point.
Yeah.
And they feel some resistance towards energy work or energy healing or like intuitive type therapies that you offer. What reassurance or guidance, like what voice of reason could you offer them?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing that drops in the most is just, you really don't have anything to lose. And if you're already trying to, especially if you're working with somebody like a practitioner like me, who's trained in both, you're still going to get the benefits of traditional talk therapy. But also the thing with energy is, if like you're hesitant, think about how much you trust Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is just energy. It's just like it, and that's, our entire world is made of energy. I always tell people, I'm like, every single thing in science and every single thing, like advancement that we've made, is using energy. So if we know that every single thing, thoughts, objects, experiences, are all made of energy, it makes sense that if we go and heal at the root, we're going to notice a difference. And if you can like trust and your Wi-Fi or these kind of, or like Bluetooth, you can trust energy healings. And that's like, and somebody, when I told them that, they were like, oh, I never thought about that. I was like, you don't really think about how Wi-Fi works, but essentially it's a transference of energy, or like radio, like we think about radio and the sound waves and things like that. So I would say that, in addition to, there actually is quite a bit of research about different energy healings and energy work throughout history. It's been used across the board on multiple different communities in different ways. So there is research out there about especially when it comes to the mental health field. I was just reading an article from 2023, and they were doing studies on remote energy healing, shamanic energy healings for PTSD, anxiety, and depression. And every single person had a positive result. Every single person had biophysical and like mental health cognitive shifts in their results after receiving the healing. So there is research that's coming out. And that's really when we look at therapeutic methodologies and practices, the requirement is that it just has to be evidence-based. And so that's really like, there's already evidence that is showing and proving that energy healings do have an impact. They're actually starting to teach Reiki in hospitals to practitioners to improve or decrease the amount of complications during surgery and after now.
Okay, so a few things dropped in for me. That was so good because you hit on like two types of people. You know how they say there's like readers and then there's visual learners, like they're viewers, readers and viewers. So I would say my viewers were like, oh, I trust Wi-Fi. I'm in. And then my readers were like, my readers that are listening are like, I needed that data and I needed that study. So thank you. And I also foresee now I'm like every spiritual energy worker needs to, there's going to be a viral post that's like, do you trust Wi-Fi? Then you should trust me.
Literally. It's like, it's the same
so
thing.
It's such a good analogy though, because it's so true. We literally just trust it.
We do. We're like, is it there? I'm just going to find the name and connect to it. And then
there we go. And we're good to go.
Yeah.
Okay. I love it. So I want to talk a little bit more because your methods are very non-traditional and I can't wait to book a session with you. And preparing for today's episode, I was like reading all about all of your things. And one of my favorite things that's on your website is your math breakdown of the cost of traditional therapy versus the cost of yours. So we're going to come back to that because I want you to break it down. It is so freaking powerful. But first, let's talk about both the intuitive therapy method and then the anxiety languages that you offer.
Okay. Yes. So breaking down, you said the main intuitive therapy and then the anxiety languages.
Yeah. So tell us about the two different modalities, how they work, what you can expect, and who they're good for.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the anxiety languages because that's actually the first thing that I created. The intuitive therapy method came a little bit later. I really wanted to create something at the time. It was 2020. Everyone started going to therapy because the world shut down with the pandemic and everyone had anxiety.
Great to go to therapy. Good job.
Yes, it's great. I do. I want everyone to go to therapy. It's a great shift, but everyone had severe anxiety. It was just like, and one of the reasons for that is most of our coping mechanisms that are in our everyday life, like overworking or going out with our friends or going out to do these things, or like even like going out to bars and things like that, that help keep us distracted from the things that we don't want to deal with, we're gone. So now everyone's anxiety was like, it's my time to shine. And so I really wanted a way to help people understand their anxiety and not necessarily always see it as this flaw or something that's wrong with them. This framework is specifically to help you get deeper. So let's say you're listening and you're like, well, I have a therapist that I like that I just want to stick with for now. This is a tool that you can use to make more out of your sessions. Your primary anxiety languages, and normally people have two that are like the strongest, are going to tell you where to focus your time and attention in a session, because it's going to tell you what the root of your anxiety, your issues right now are focused on. And the anxiety languages are the way that our anxiety speaks to us, because our anxiety is just a survival tool. The reason it's there is because who you are at your core, your most authentic self, is so important and matters so much for this world that it has a built-in protection mechanism. Anxiety is there to protect the pieces of your soul that are yours and are so important for you to share with the world. So it's not that something is wrong with you. It's actually that something is so very right with you. And this just tells us the ways that anxiety starts speaking to us before it gets to the point where it's physical, before we're having panic attacks, before our body deeply feels it. It speaks through behaviors. A great example I like to use for this is you could be, when you were younger, maybe you went to school and you wore a purple cowgirl hat and it had zebra print on it and it was different. Nobody else was wearing it, but you went to school and kids teased you for it. And you changed the behavior and you decided not to wear anything outlandish. You wanted to instead, then you got really into like, well, what is everyone else wearing? And even though it's not necessarily anxious behavior, it's a change from what was authentically felt more like you. And when you continue living that way, and now it becomes more of an ingrained part of your personality as you grow and change, now you're living from this place of anxiety instead of going back, working through, processing the feelings, and letting yourself come back into more of that authenticity, but just from a different place. Does that make sense? Okay,
Makes
cool.
so much sense. And I actually wanna ask you something here, because
Yeah.
I recently saw a holistic doctor that
Uh-huh.
also is an intuitive.
Uh-huh.
And I don't define myself as like an anxious person. And I feel like a lot of people could relate to this.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going through the experience, right? And he's like, you have anxiety. And I was like, no, like I don't. And he
Yeah.
goes, well, let me ask you a question. Are you stressed? And I'm like, well, who isn't? And he goes, well, stress is a form of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So could you, because I think that there's so many people who just, they look at like the traditional like panic attacks, for
Yeah.
example, as meaning that that's what defines your anxiety. So it's really
Yeah.
eye-opening for me, because, and I think that it would help a lot of the listeners that
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily like identify or label themselves as anxious, but
Mm-hmm.
actually have anxiety that is stress. Do you
Yeah.
agree to that? And could you
Oh
break
yeah,
that down at all?
I
Yeah.
definitely agree to it. And what I will add to that is anxiety to me can even show up as a feeling of like, I feel unsatisfied. I feel like I need more. I feel like I need to keep
Mm.
doing something and to try to get to this place that like, then I'll feel calm. So depending on the language is going to depend how it shows up. So do you mind if I go through each of them?
Yeah, please.
Perfect. Okay.
Let's do it.
So the first one is overachiever. This is my primary anxiety language. So even though I'm like constantly working on myself and I'm doing these different things, this is how my anxiety will let me know when something in my life is out of alignment or is making me feel unsafe on a physical, a soul, or an emotional, mental level.
Yeah.
And so with this one, each anxiety language has a root fear. And this is kind of where we're talking about, like, you want to go back to this root place. With this one, with the overachiever, the root fear is that if I don't perform, if I don't achieve, then my needs won't be met and I won't be seen. So it has this fear of neglect, essentially, and so these individuals, the behaviors they'll see is like making the really long list, or like having very future oriented. These people love to live in the future. They're like, okay, if something stressful happens, they're like, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on what's ahead. They stay busy. They tend to be a little bit more of my workaholics. And they also feel like everything is very performative. Like there's a difference between like, okay, when I'm done working, it's always like, okay, I'm relaxing at home and I don't have this mask on, where like a lot of the things how they show up in work is different than how they feel on the inside. So if you feel that, maybe it's not anxious, but you feel that there is a difference in how people perceive you at work and how people perceive you at home, and you play into that is a form of anxiety. Any area where you're not fully authentic is essentially your anxiety showing up for safety.
Okay.
It's to protect
Yeah.
you. Does that make sense for that one? Make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
The second one is martyr. So this one, it really impacts and I will say for the overachiever, if we're more of my, woo listeners, it impacts your heart chakra. So with the overachiever, it also is really hard for you to accept compliments, for you to accept things that you feel like you haven't worked for. So that's another thing. It really impacts how you receive. The martyr anxiety language, which is a lot in the throat chakra, it's blue, or I see it as blue when I energetically connect with it. But its root fear is that I am not good, and so therefore I'm unworthy of love. And what a lot of times I see this show up for individuals who've experienced corporal punishment as a child, because the only way your ego could process the fact that somebody who says that they love you and who you love and who you need could hurt you is, I must be bad, because they're treating me bad, and this thing is bad because I'm bad. And so then what happens is the survival strategy that you learned is, okay, if I can say yes and I can make their lives easier and I can be of service, then they won't treat me bad, because they'll think that I'm good. So it's the behaviors you're going to see are people who struggle with boundaries, people who feel like they have to say yes even when they're saying no, people who really invalidate their experience by comparing to other people's suffering. So think of like, I shouldn't be upset. I should just be grateful because somebody has it worse, or because there are other people who don't have, X, Y, and Z. A lot of times they feel like they have to be of service. In business, this is going to look like feeling bad for raising your prices, even though the pricing that you're currently at doesn't feel good for you and you feel burnt out from your work. This also looks like you know, feeling like when other people are suffering, feeling like you have to save them or solve the problem for them. And so those are all anxious behaviors, because at your core, this like inner child or younger version of you, or this part of you, believes that they're not good and wants to avoid especially physical pain. And so you'll notice that you're more stressed when you don't know how to be of service to somebody, or you don't have like those like people to take care of. I see this a lot in moms who they make their entire identity being moms, and they have a lot of stress when their kids start to transition and they're empty nesters. I don't think I'm missing anything there. This also impacts your self-expression, because you see yourself as whatever roles you're playing, however you're serving other people. It's hard for you to see yourself as separate. There's a deep fear of being perceived as selfish. So there's a big theme on like moral high ground, and almost like a lot of times these individuals can feel judgmental, or they get a little judgy about people who they don't feel are serving others. Like they like maybe I'm thinking of somebody in particular in my personal life who I know has this anxiety language, and she very much is like, well, why aren't all of these people who have all this money doing this and helping these people? Because she gives away all of her things, because she isn't good at holding things, because she feels like she has to give it away so she's not perceived as bad. And you also usually don't feel worthy of people loving you. It feels like it has to be hard. Okay.
I feel like we need to like put your Venmo square at the bottom of the show notes for this. This is so good. This is so good. And people will be, I feel like it's good to understand these different languages, because people just label anxiety a certain way. So
yeah,
everyone rolling, my friend.
Yeah. Anxiety is, a lot of people treat it as a blanket statement. And I'm like, no, there's so much. There's so much. Okay. So the next one is going to be pleaser. A lot of people think that they're pleasers because they're like, oh, I'm a people pleaser. I care how people think. But I won't always say that, just because when you look at this one, I see it energetically as orange. The root fear is being abandoned. And so the behaviors that show up is they are going to try to mirror what other people want, or what other people like, or even like other people. So it's not necessarily about always saying yes, 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 like the martyr. It's about being a chameleon. It's about changing who you are, how you're perceived in different groups. These individuals a lot of times think that they're introverts, but really it's hard to mirror multiple people at once. So parties overwhelm them. They feel very insecure at parties. These individuals will also a lot of times, like they might have lots of connections, be in lots of different groups and communities, but they feel lonely. They don't feel like anyone actually knows them. And that's because in all their relationships, they're just mirroring. And so nobody actually does. And part of that is they learned that if they can be what other people want to see, then they'll be safe. Nobody will ever be able to abandon them, because they don't know who they are. And that people are more likely to stay when they're being mirrored what they want. So another behavior that you might see is individuals who really like are into like gossip, or knowing celebrity gossip, or hearing like what's going on, and being super into the trends, and like wanting to fit into the trends and follow along. That is all an anxiety language. Like you want to know what people want and how to make yourself what people want. These individuals also are very hard on themselves on a surface level. So they are like, I need to look a certain way. And if I don't, then like nothing is going to work for me. And they also tend to struggle with friendships. Their relationships feel very like heavy and dramatic. And I don't mean dramatic in like a judgmental way, but just like where there feels like there's lots of conflict, and they feel misunderstood. They really struggle with communication. And so they're individuals who probably regularly experience like friendship breakups and things like that. So if that is you, this is something where like relationships do feel heavier for you in general, because you have to take time to get to know yourself without needing to be a chameleon. Like, like helping yourself to feel safe enough to explore pieces of yourself, and then starting to like show up and things like that. So, and they spent so many years abandoning themselves that that's just what they're used to doing. Like being seen and witnessed feels so uncomfortable for them. I notice a lot of my clients they're business owners, and they're like, yeah, I want to be seen. I want people to like see my business. I want to get paid well, but they only want their clients to see what they want them to see. And so they've spent so long abandoning themselves. They don't even know what it looks like to witness themselves and to witness their power, their magic, their authenticity. And that, So that's that one.
We've got overachiever, we've got the martyr, and we've got the pleaser.
Yes. The next, the last two are controller and number. So controller is, I always see it as red. It really impacts the root chakra, which is, for those of you who know, it's like home, security, community, money, all of your basic needs. It's at the very base of the spine. And with the controller anxiety language, the core fear is that there's not enough, that there's a lack of resources, and it's going to threaten physical survival. So with these individuals, a lot of times growing up, their home was unstable, whether through parents' relationship, let's say like divorce, or there was money issues in the home and it felt very unstable. So there's kind of two dialects with this one as well, where you have dialect one, which is what everyone thinks the controller is, which is like micromanaging. They don't like to delegate. They're like, I want to make the decisions. I don't want anyone else making the decisions. It feels excruciating if they try to let other people step in and make choices. And then the other side of that is like, think of it as like the type B person. So the very opposite of type A. This is the person who's like, I can't make a decision. Like they want all the information, but then they procrastinate and they wait last minute, and they're like, I don't want to lead. I don't want to be seen as, like, leadership really stresses them out. They kind of want to be behind the scenes, but they still want all of the information. And the reason for that is they learned at one point, the people for the like type B dialect, that making a decision, most likely they made a decision growing up and it was met with some type of fight, some type of like falling out within the family, or they saw individuals who were making choices and then something bad happened. So they learned that commitment is actually something that can cause instability and a lack of physical survival. They learned that commitment meant that there could be like, you commit to one thing and it could be the wrong choice. So these individuals also struggle with committing to one thing. They'll try to do all of the things to try to cover all the bases. And then on the type A dialect, they learned that along the way that most likely they had parents, caregivers, just adults who were making decisions for them. And then they felt the unease, they saw the lack of, like just the lack of stability. And in their minds, the way that their ego processed that is, if I had control, if I was making the decisions, then it would be different because I would have chose something different. So there's also kind of this element of like people felt that they were in charge of them and didn't care about the aftermath of it. So that's why now they don't trust anyone else to make decisions. They don't trust anyone else to be in charge. These individuals also really struggle with letting go of things emotionally and physically. They hold on to everything, grudges, a t-shirt from when they were in middle school or high school that no longer fits. They hold on to everything because the mindset is, well, what if I need this? And then I don't have the resources to be able to get something that I need. So this is in the extremes, we see this as being a hoarder. Where like they can't let go of things. They have to have it around because if somebody like their family or themselves needs it and they got rid of it and now they can't have it, again, that lack of resources, that lack of stability, it really drives them in a lot of things. And they're unable to see the world outside of, well, there's not enough. So this is like people who are run by their scarcity mindset. When people use the term scarcity mindset, you most likely have the controller anxiety language.
Okay.
And then the last one is number. This is where I see a lot of my male clients are in this category, mostly because for men, there wasn't the space to have all these up and down emotions. In fact, they were taught that their emotions are like bad and not to be expressed. So they spent a lot of time numbing. Now, the core fear of the number anxiety language is you learned at some point or your ego learned at some point that a specific part of who you are, whether it be what you want, your personality, an activity that you enjoy doing, a way to express yourself, whatever, is a threat to your physical survival. So your ego spends a lot of time trying to silence, shrink down that part of yourself. This is also where we can see anxiety that turns into depression. But the main behaviors are going to be like when you have kind of like an obsessive personality, where you will, let's say that you all of a sudden are into like jump roping and you're obsessed with jump roping. You make whatever it is you're learning about your personality and you go through these cycles of like learning a ton of information in a small amount of time, and you're just like, I'm gonna take this all the way to whatever, I'm gonna be whatever, and you do it until you realize it's not really filling the bucket the way you thought you were going to. So then you move on to the next thing, or you kind of hit like a crash moment, and then you move on to the next thing. So those cycles of kind of like obsession, making things outside of yourself your whole personality, really that's to try to fill that part of yourself that it doesn't feel safe to feel. A good example of this, my dad always hates when I use this example because it's so him to a T. But men make their favorite sports teams and their favorite sports their whole personality. That is how they let themselves experience emotion. You know, I remember growing up, my dad, his favorite team would lose and he'd be upset, like he'd be in a bad mood for 2 days. That is your emotions from other places in your life, finding the only safe outlet that it can. So that is like a great example of
such a good example because it's so prevalent.
Yes. So like I had a client who he was like, his favorite team lost. And he was like, I feel so down. Like I'm having another episode of he was coming to me for treating depression. I was like, no, you're not. I was like, let's actually talk about what's at the root. And we went through the energetic exploration and did the healing. And what we found out is like, that is how he lets himself actually feel emotion and let himself feel sad and anger is through sports. And then when we saw that, because he thought that sports were a trigger, or he thought he was just too sensitive. And I was like, no, this is just the only outlet that your emotions have.
Well, and it's almost like society almost teaches you that it's safe to do it with the sports because there's people doing it together. So it's this is okay because he is feeling that way too. And so you're masking it.
And this is what it's like to be a fan, but they tie so much of their identity and their emotions to these sports teams. And that's like one of the like staple ways that I can identify if a man has an identity or a number anxiety language. In addition to, of course, we have like also a substance abuse isn't like falls in this category and things like that. Yeah. But for people listening who are like, no, I don't really like find myself like addicted to substances. How are you when your teams lose? How are you? Do you find yourself obsessed with that kind of stuff? And that's really also a sign that there is a place within yourself that you constantly reject and try to shrink down because you're afraid that it will lead to some type of like rejection, like whatever your body views as being unsafe. Because you have to remember when we have these experiences, they don't have to make logical sense. When you're a child and you experience rejection from a parent, from a caregiver, that does feel like life or death, especially because children are programmed to prioritize the feelings and the reactions of their caregivers for the sake of survival. So if you have a bunch of inner child stuff and you have a bunch of woundings there, rejections there, every decision that you make, every like behavior is going to be that wounded child at the steering wheel. And so if you're looking, I had clients who I was talking to the other weekend, they were talking about money and they were like, I want to make this large amount of money and I want to do this in my business. If that child doesn't feel safe doing that, because that would make them different than their family. And that child is always going to prioritize how accepted they are in that core group of people, whether it logically makes sense to you or whether that adult logic is like, that doesn't, no, I don't want that.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So we really have to look at those things to figure out, why are we experiencing these same cycles or patterns of behavior? Because the mind is really just the translator for what is happening energetically and what your nervous system is carrying. So we can't talk our way or intellectualize our way into a regulated nervous system or into clear energy. We have to approach it from those bottom 2 layers of it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so good. Thank you so much for breaking down each type, because no matter who was listening to this, you resonated with one of the types, right? So that was so powerful and so helpful. And I know there's people going, oh my gosh, like having breakthroughs, just going through that exercise alone, because they didn't know how to label it. They didn't know what to call it. They were told by a traditional therapist or a doctor, you have anxiety. And they're like, well, what does that even mean? Because I don't feel anxious by definition. That everybody labels it. So thank you so much for that. Now, tell me a little bit about how the anxiety languages, because you broke down each of the types, right? So if somebody really resonated and they're like, wow, that's me. How will the program help them?
Yeah. So the anxiety languages are essentially, you would use them like in the intuitive therapy method program, or you would use them in like a therapeutic session, because now that you know which one you resonate with, you can look at that root fear. Like let's take the number, for example. And you can say, I want to focus on where throughout my life I have felt it's unsafe to be me. I want to focus on like what parts of myself do I wish were different. So instead of just kind of, you go into a session and a therapist asks you like, how's it going? What do you want to talk about today? And you're coming up with just like kind of the surface level of maybe things that have gone on in the past week. You're now able to set an intention and like go at the root issue, even if you don't get there right away, because it does. It's harder to get the results in traditional talk therapy as like with intuitive therapy, but you have this really great direction on where you need to focus your time and attention, because that's going to help you get to the root a lot quicker, which is what we want to get the results. In intuitive therapy and the intuitive therapy method, we'll use that as knowledge to see and catch anxiety before it becomes something that becomes a block. So, I mean, we'll work through the root of the issue really quickly, usually within like the first 2 to 3 sessions. And so then that way you're not having those reactions. But if it comes up again, whether it's while we're working like together in the program or even after, we can use that as like, okay, let's now like energetically explore these different areas, like the sensations and the behavior, because that will give us a direct link to, okay, what's actually at the root here. So I had a client today who, she's about halfway through her like sessions, because we do 13 sessions for the intuitive therapy method. And she had like, she's been having great results every single time. Within the first month, she was like, oh, I don't have anxiety anymore. And I'm not like yelling at my husband all the time. And I was like, yay, we love that. And today, like this past week has been really, really like, it's just felt heavier. And she's noticed some of those behaviors kind of like surfacing up, not in the same intensity, but just like she's aware of them. And we went into it energetically today in her session. And there was layers of ancestral work, as well as this younger version of her that really was like, I need to be perfect, because how else is anyone going to see me? And it showed us a specific memory of hers and in a specific experience. And it aligned with the experience that was coming through for a great grandmother that was showing up in the session as well. So then what we do is we rewrite it. We do energy healings with it, but we also rewrite it. And then we pull integration steps. So like an integration step might be to help this healing be absorbed and like fully land and ground into the body. You have like the client might have to go and like go on a walk or move their body in a specific way or do these specific actions. So we layer that in with afterwards. But she said, she was like, I feel completely different. She was like, I felt like I couldn't breathe going into this session, and I feel so much better. And I was like, okay, good. So did that answer your question and give you like a good example? Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I think that, it's, okay, I want you to go, let's go back to what we talked about a moment ago, where I like the math. Okay. Because somebody who's used to traditional therapy, but listen, guys, it's not working because you're still feeling like shit. I want you to break that piece down a little bit. And then talk about where we can like find you, how we can schedule our sessions with you, because I can't freaking wait.
Yeah. So I can't remember the specific numbers on there, because like I did them and then I put them in there. But essentially, when we look at even like data and research has shown in traditional talk therapy, it takes 10 months of weekly, at least 10 months of weekly sessions in traditional talk therapy to have one breakthrough. And only 60% of the people who are in traditional talk therapy every single week for at least 10 months are experiencing that. That means 40% of people are still not having a breakthrough within the first year of therapy. For most people, they say about 2 to 3 years is where you start to see the biggest results, upward of 5 years. A lot of the clients who I originally started working with, and even I would say now, have been in therapy for 5+ years with very little changes. They have all the tools and they know they're supposed to use these tools, and they really shame themselves because when push comes to shove, when they're in a moment of stress or what the body perceives as crisis, they're not reaching into those tools. Their body is going with what feels safe. and their mind is falling back into patterns because that's what has been shown to be the safest. So then they continue to go and they feel like it has to be this lifelong journey of trying to force themselves to have these results. Now, if you think about that mathematically, if you have to be in therapy for at least 2 to 3 years, and each session is between, I think the average cost of a therapy session in the United States is between like $150 and $200. You're spending that every single week for an unbeknownst amount of time, but let's just say like 2 years. Math is not my forte. So whatever 200 times.
It's about $4,800.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
That's only if you were going once a month. So we got to times that by 4.
Yeah.
So we're at like, let's just say 12 to 15,000.
Okay. Yeah. So, and that's per year. And so you're spending that every single year for very little results and continuing to kind of just stay like an inch above like the suffering that you experience versus like 13 sessions in intuitive therapy, where every single session you're having 2 to 3 breakthroughs and you feel better after every single session. Another thing that really like blew my mind when I, I like diving into research and numbers and things like that, was the fact that a large amount of people, I think it was like 40 to 60%, I have to look at the article again, experience feeling worse after therapy sessions and feel more reactive and more likely to fight with their partners after a therapy session. That is the opposite in intuitive therapy. Every single one of my clients, and I say this with so much confidence because I've done over 500 readings and in intuitive therapy worked with over 300 people. Every single one of them experiences feeling better after their sessions, and they feel lighter. They have better like health results afterwards. So there's a slew of benefits, but you're spending in intuitive therapy for 13 sessions, you're spending $7,000 versus $15,000 a year for multiple years at a time. Right. So you're saving so much money and the results are sustainable. A lot of times people will go to therapy. If they do get results, it takes 1, maybe 2 heavier, bigger experiences, or maybe not even bigger experiences, but just inconvenient experiences for them to regress. And then they have to come back and essentially start over. My clients don't regress. They sustain the results. Now, other layers of things are integrating. Yes, because we're integrating.
Like you're embodying the changes. That's like it keeps dropping in on me. I'm like, you just say integrate. Like you're really rewriting it. Swapping out the script.
Yeah, well, and the main part is because we're not trying to use intellect and logic. A lot of methods in traditional talk therapy are like, well, does this make sense? Like, let's talk about, and that doesn't matter to the nervous system at all. Sense and intellect don't matter. So we're really approaching it from the energetic and the nervous system level. And then the cognitive changes like that. We're not even really worried about changing the cognitive mind because that will change once the energetic and the nervous system is cleared and rewritten. So that's also what helps keep the results sustained is yes, the integration and the fact that we're really going at the root of the level. Does that answer all the questions and get into the math of it a little bit? Okay.
No, here's the point for you listening. It is so much more effective. It is so much more affordable to go this route. And if you're really looking for a change now, this is an option that I'd highly recommend that you explore. So let's give the listeners that are like, wow, this was like big for me. Maybe they're feeling like confronted. Maybe they're feeling seen, like they could be all over the place, right? So for somebody listening who feels stuck or like in overwhelm or anxiety right now, what's one small thing that they could do right after this episode immediately to take some action to reclaim their power?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things that I like to have people start with is I want you to figure out what is I call it a divine yes or a divine no. Maybe other people call it like a holy yes, a holy no. What does that feel like in your body? Because the reason we want to start understanding what that feels like is it makes it easier to A, make decisions from an aligned place, and B, it helps reconnect the body, the mind, and the soul. So many people are walking around where their energy is like up here, half hanging out of their body. So they're taking in everyone else's stuff all of the time. And their nervous system is like, oh my God, I'm at capacity. And so they're making decisions only from the logic. And so it doesn't feel good. or then they're over intellectualizing every single decision, and then they wrap it in shame. And so I want you to start figuring out, this is an exercise I do all the time. And you can start simply by asking yourself a question that you know is a yes and a question you know is a no. So I will always ask myself, is my name Annamarie Francis Green? And I pay attention to what my body feels like when I ask that. Where do I feel it? What sensations are coming up? For me, it's always like a warming sensation that starts in my belly and goes upward. So I know that that's what a yes feels like in my body. And then I ask myself, is my name Benjamin Green, which my brother's name? And then I pay attention to what the sensations are there. And for me, it's like usually a contraction of some sort, or like it just feels like tighter, more rigid in a specific specific place in my body. That tells me what a no feels like. And the more that you can get to know that, so when you're feeling really, really anxious and you're like, I don't know what it is, you can ask yourself, like, does this have to do with something in my childhood? And then is it a yes or is it a no? Even if it doesn't make any sense to you, because the body doesn't care about logic. The body is going to tell you what's true. So you start with that, and it gives you a place to start focusing your time and your attention, to start focusing your wellness practices. Like, even if you're like, okay, I know it's in childhood, you could ask yourself, like, is this impacting like cramping in my body, or is it impacting X, Y, and Z? It's also a great way to test supplements. It's a great way to just test what is for you and what is not for you.
So good. So good, so practical, and something you can do literally immediately. So thank you so much for that. Okay, this has been absolutely incredible. You got to tell us all where we can find you. And I'm going to put it in the show notes too, but if you're driving or you're on your run or you don't have a place to like look it up, we're going to throw it in the show notes, but tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram is where I'm most active. And I'm at Annamarie F. Green. And I do like monthly mini free readings for the community. But that's usually where you can DM me if you have questions, or if you have questions about intuitive therapy. Usually that's where you'll find me answering the quickest. So go there, but you also can go to my website for all different information and all of the like math breakdown and all the specifics there. And that's just AnnamarieGreen.com.
Okay, you guys, I don't know about you, but I am like ready to book. So I cannot wait to experience it. And we'll have to bring you back to like even break down a step further, like what the integration does and all of that would be so fun. Absolutely. So something that I love to do here at Magic in the Mess is I feel like as entrepreneurs, as healers, as givers, as whatever, like I have, whatever type of guest I have on, I feel like we don't do enough celebrating of the big and the small stuff. So I call it a magic moment, and it's something I want you to think about that we can help celebrate with you. We could reach out to you on Instagram and say, hey, I heard the episode. I just wanted to give you a shout out. Whatever it is, big or small, in the last 7 days that happened that we can help you celebrate.
I have been holding my boundaries with work very well in the last 7 days. I've been like shutting off at a certain time and then going and spending the rest of the evening with my family. As a recovering single parent and person who experienced poverty in my adulthood, it was very hard for me to do that. I struggled for a little while with like having good boundaries with my work-life balance.
Oh, and you told us that you were an overachiever, that's your anxiety model.
Yes. So yes, all of the above. So it's just like time
integration.
Yes,
that is huge. Okay, so go give her a warm congratulations and celebrate that moment with her, because that truly is magical. And if you resonated with this episode, or you feel like it could help somebody, you heard one of the types of anxiety and you're like, this friend I thought of, send them the episode, help them out, go rate, review, and like the show. Go follow Annamarie. Annamarie, thank you so much for being here. It was truly a pleasure.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.